The night was set for casual laughs and clever banter as Jimmy Kimmel welcomed Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to the stage. The audience cheered as she walked out confidently, dressed to impress and smiling with poise. As the interview began, Jimmy leaned into his usual charm, tossing out a light jab about the dramatic tension in Congress lately, aiming to get a chuckle. Jasmine smiled, waiting patiently, then responded with grace. But it was when Jimmy made a sarcastic remark about politicians finally learning how to use email without starting a scandal that the tone shifted slightly. Jasmine didn't miss a beat. With a sly grin, she leaned forward and delivered a comeback that flipped the entire narrative. She quipped, "Well, Jimmy, at least we don't need a whole writing staff to land a punchline," instantly drawing a mix of laughter and stunned gasps from the crowd. For a split second, Jimmy looked genuinely caught off guard, blinking as the weight of her words settled in. The crowd erupted not just in laughter but in the kind of applause that signals a shared moment of unexpected truth. Jasmine kept her cool, smiling warmly as Jimmy chuckled, nodding in respectful defeat. What started as playful teasing had turned into a brilliant moment of wit and authenticity. The chemistry between them remained intact, but the balance of power had clearly shifted, if only for a moment. It wasn't scripted, and that made it unforgettable. As the conversation moved forward, Jimmy Kimmel tried to steer things into more humorous territory. He joked about the chaos in Congress, mimicking exaggerated hand gestures and mock arguments. The audience laughed along, but Jasmine Crockett sat calmly, waiting for the right moment. Then Jimmy threw out a comment that pushed the edge, something about how politicians like Jasmine must rehearse drama more than policy. The crowd chuckled nervously, sensing the jab might have gone too far. Jasmine raised an eyebrow, paused for dramatic effect, and then replied in a voice as smooth as silk, "Well, Jimmy, if I wanted acting tips, I'd come to your show. If I wanted results, I'd stick to Congress." The audience reaction was instant. There was a collective "oh-h-h-h," followed by booming laughter, and then an echo of gasps. People couldn't believe what they had just heard. Jimmy leaned back in his chair, clearly taken aback but visibly impressed. He grinned, placing a hand over his chest as if to say, "You got me." Jasmine just smiled coolly, eyes locked on him with unshaken confidence. It wasn't mean-spirited, but it was sharp, razor sharp. Her timing was flawless, and her presence electrified the moment. What had been a typical celebrity interview turned into something far more exciting, a battle of wits where Jasmine came out on top, leaving the audience in pure shock and admiration. The energy in the studio was playful as Jimmy Kimmel cracked jokes about current events, weaving in some light commentary about politics. Jasmine Crockett laughed politely, keeping her responses poised and measured. But then Jimmy decided to push the envelope. With a smirk, he leaned forward and said, "Come on, Jasmine, don't you all just argue for the cameras? Feels more like reality TV than real work." The crowd chuckled, some nodding in agreement, thinking it was just another clever jab. Jasmine's smile faded slightly, and her eyes sharpened with intention. She leaned in closer and said, "Well, Jimmy, if we're reality TV, then you must be the rerun everyone keeps watching because they forgot what real comedy looks like." The silence that followed was deafening for a second. Then came the explosion of laughter and applause, mixed with a few audible gasps. The moment hit like a thunderclap, quick, sharp, and totally unexpected. Jimmy blinked, clearly not prepared for the burn. He tried to laugh it off, nodding and holding his hands up like he'd just been roasted, which he had expertly. Jasmine didn't gloat, she didn't flinch, she simply relaxed back into her seat, cool as ever, letting the moment speak for itself. The audience couldn't stop talking, whispering and clapping long after the exchange ended. What was meant to be a throwaway punchline from the host turned into a mic-drop moment from the guest, and the power in the room shifted instantly in Jasmine's favor. The tension in the room had been quietly building as Jimmy Kimmel, known for poking fun at political figures, took a few increasingly pointed shots during the interview. Jasmine Crockett handled the first few jabs with grace, offering light-hearted responses and even laughing along. But as the conversation went deeper into her role in Congress and the controversies circling Capitol Hill, Jimmy smirked and said, You must have taken a master class in dodging questions. So politicians have that skill down to an art." The audience laughed awkwardly, sensing the dig. Jasmine paused, her demeanor changing ever so slightly. Her smile remained, but her eyes narrowed with precision. She leaned in slowly and said, "I'd rather dodge silly questions than throw softballs for a living. At least I answer to the people, not a teleprompter." The reaction was immediate. Gasps, whistles, and a rumble of applause filled the studio. Even Jimmy had to sit back, clearly not expecting her to bite back with such finesse. He let out a surprised laugh, raising his eyebrows, then muttered, okay, I walked right into that one." Jasmine just gave a small nod, her expression unbothered, fully in control of the room. The energy shifted dramatically. What began as a playful conversation had transformed into a subtle showdown, with Jasmine owning the moment without raising her voice or breaking a sweat. The audience felt it, and so did Jimmy. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a statement. A moment that showed intelligence, confidence, and the art of knowing exactly when to strike. As the interview neared its end, the mood on set was upbeat, filled with light laughter and well-timed jokes. Jimmy Kimmel, always looking to close strong, decided to poke fun one last time. With a mischievous grin, he turned to Jasmine Crockett and said, "So tell me, how many committee meetings does it take before someone in Congress actually listens?" The audience chuckled, thinking it was just another harmless quip. Jasmine smiled back, paused briefly, then leaned in with a calm but piercing tone. "Probably the same number of jokes it takes before this audience realizes you've been recycling them since 2007. The crowd went silent for half a second, unsure if they heard her right up. Then the studio exploded with laughter, gasps, and spontaneous applause. It wasn't just the line, it was how she delivered it, smooth, controlled, and without a hint of hesitation. Jimmy blinked rapidly, clearly stunned but amused. He put his hands up and said, "Whoa, that was brutal in the best way." The cameramen were caught chuckling, and even the band couldn't help but react with a few playful notes. Jasmine didn't gloat, she simply adjusted in her chair, looking serene and unapologetically sharp. That one line turned a playful interview into a legendary TV moment. The audience wasn't just entertained, they were captivated. Jasmine had not only matched Jimmy's wit but surpassed it with precision. It was one of those rare live television moments where the balance of control subtly flipped, and everyone in the room felt it happen in real time.